are here with me live. It happens to be the 11th of February. If you're watching an archive or replay, I want to also welcome you to the show. And it's 11 a.m., morning time. I am really happy to be here. I hope that you guys are having a good week so far. I want to let you know that we are over in the chat room, and you can find the chat room by heading over to 12radio.com. That's number 2radio.com. Click on the chat button, and you'll be redirected into the Facebook chat. And our handy dandy producer Scott is standing by, and he will gladly let you in the room. That's how to find us. My banner is at the top of the page for the Katie Weaver Show. That's where most of our chatting will be going on. And if you have a comment or a question, that's a good place to put it. I'm also live streaming this event through the chat room. And you can find that, again, by accessing the chat. And you can scroll down and find the chat, or the live stream. If you would like to listen to the live, if you would like to watch the live stream later on, you'll find it over on my YouTube channel, which is Domestic Mystic on YouTube. So there's all the housekeeping for you. And this is going to be a fun show. We've got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, I want to, before I forget, make sure that you guys know that tomorrow I have the honor of being a guest on the Long Road with Kai Greenway. We started a conversation 2 weeks ago about dreams and dreaming and dreamtime experiences and intuition, and 1 hour just didn't cut it. So I'm coming back to finish that conversation. That is tomorrow, Wednesday, the 12th at noon Pacific time. And I would love to see you guys there to join us in that conversation. So that's what's going on around here. Also, tomorrow is 1-2 Day. 1-2 Day happens to be one of the funnest days of the month here in 1-2 world, right? That's when we have major sales going on, awesome prices, and just a lot of celebration for all things 1-2. And I would love to talk to you guys. So I will be there all day, except for that little stint over on Kai's show, but it's got to happen. So it is what it is. Anyway, with all that being said, welcome. I see a lot of you guys popping up in the chat and here in the live stream. So welcome. How's your week, guys? How did that full moon do for you? Did you sleep? Did you not sleep? How did your pets do? I liked the energy of it a lot. It felt hopeful. It felt kind. Last week was so harsh, and it felt loving to me. But I noticed that not the night of the full moon, but the night after, my dogs did not sleep. They had me in and out of bed all night. And I was like, what the hell is wrong with these guys? And then I remembered, oh, we're literally like coming off of a full moon. And sometimes at my house, a full moon is very sleepless. And last night was quite sleepless. I had a kid in my bed on and off. I had dogs in and out of my bed. It was just a pretty restless night. So hopefully tonight we get to, break through that and not repeat it. But that's sometimes a side effect of the moon at my house. I want to let you guys know we're going to have some fun today. I'm going to teach you some psychic games, some activities, and give you some ideas of ways that you can practice working on your own intuition. And I love psychic games. Back when I had my center and I was doing a lot of, teaching a lot of kids, I had a whole arsenal of psychic games that we would play to help work on intuition for adults and for kids. So I'm going to share some of those with you guys today. So that's the topic at, when we get there. But Chris Ann said she had the same experience with her cats. Okay, so all of the four-leggeds are a little restless. Let's see. Kate said it was awesome. I didn't even know it was night, and I was wide awake enjoying my time, and then it dawned on me. Oh, the full moon night. Nice. Well, good. I do like the energy we've moved into this week. It's so much better than last week. Last week was harsh. Definitely we feel a little bit better, or hopefully a lot bit better. I want to tell you guys about a little journey that I am on, a little journey of, how do I say that? Self-growth. So to explain this journey to you, I have to go back to the beginning. When I was a kid, I was really afraid of dead things, dead animals, most particularly, like the sight of roadkill, or like the cats would bring in a dead bird and I would lose it. I was terrified of dead things when I was a kid. And moving up into my early child or my early adult years, terrified of dead things. Having to go through things like deaths of cousins and grandparents and going to viewings was very traumatic for me. When I was about 12 years old, one of our neighbors was in a terrible car accident and their 4-year-old little girl was killed. And my mom thought, and she probably wasn't wrong, but not to drag on her, but she thought that we should go to the viewing. We should experience this because kids do need to experience death and, because it's a part of life. And so that was her idea. So she took us to the viewing of this little girl. And it was traumatic as hell. And I had nightmares from it. And I'm sure she second guessed that decision many times over the next few years because it really freaked me out. It was very frightening for me. And kids gossip and talk and they say shit and other kids believe them. And so she was in ballet, this little one, and they buried her in her ballet costume with her little toe shoes. And she had long strawberry blonde hair that was all ringleted up. She was so beautiful. And she really just looked like she knew this family really well. I knew this little girl really well. And one of my friends told me that when it was time to close the casket, that mom had a major meltdown and gathered her up and tried to refuse to close the casket and begged her husband to let her just take her home. That she could just lay her on her bed and they could just take her home and they didn't have to do this. They didn't have to bury her. And now as an adult, my God, that breaks my heart. Like I can't even believe, because I can't even fathom what a horrific time this was for this family. But at the time, that horrified and scared me so bad that I couldn't babysit over there anymore. And when they would call me to babysit, I would always have an excuse because I was still had visions of that dead little girl laying on her bed. And I know that's a horrific story and it's horrific for anybody, obviously. But there was just a thing for me from really all my life about dead bodies. And again, animals probably hit me harder than people. But anyway, so there is a point to this story now that I've horrified you all. There is a point to this story when I get there. When I started learning how to do past life regression, one of the things that I was challenged to do was to look into my own fears, phobias, hang-ups, to see if there was a place in a past life where one of those things may have formed. And so I did a past life regression on myself. And what I uncovered was a lifetime in which I had been chosen by, I was a Native American life and very old, like I don't know how old, but I would say maybe 1500s-ish. I don't know, probably older actually. But in that tribe, the medicine man would eventually choose somebody that was supposed to uh, he was supposed to choose someone to replace him and train that person before he died. And he had gotten older and older and older and had never chosen anyone. And people were getting nervous, and the chief, and like the elders of this tribe were getting nervous because he had never chosen anyone. And then when I was like 12, he chose me. And it was a huge uproar because I was female in that lifetime. And in that tribe, there were male healers, not so much female healers. And it caused a huge uproar. And basically, I was quite hated because of it, because a lot of people believed that I shouldn't, that was wrong. And then I had to go live with him. So I had to leave my parents and go and live with this. And he lived kind of outside, away from the people a little bit, and lived with this weird old man who was teaching me all of these things. And all of it was very frightening. And then to go into the village with him to encounter people who hated me and didn't trust me and due to no fault of my own, but it was a frightening life. And in that lifetime, when I was, I would say probably about 17 or 18, I was approached by a girl, a couple she had a baby wrapped up in kind of a like a papoose kind of thing. I don't want to stereotype that, but something that looked like that. And she approached me and was screaming at me that if I was a healer, if I was a real healer, that I would heal her baby. And she thrust this dead baby in my arms that was like, that had been dead for a while, that was decaying, like a corpse. And it was horrifying and frightening. And she was like violently screaming at me that if I was really a healer, I could heal her baby, which I obviously could not do. But the sight of that baby was horrifying. And I came out of that past life regression recognizing, okay, now I think I'm starting to understand where some of my fear around dead bodies has come from. Obviously, my early childhood experiences colored that, obviously. But that experience had a profound effect on me. And I do believe it's something that I brought into this lifetime. And so it is something that I have had to work on and work through, especially because in my professional life, I have been a medium for a long time and actually seen dead bodies and talked to dead people for actually my whole life, And so it's just a weird bag, right? It's a weird mix of issues. And all right, so all of that, so that's the whole backstory. And the idea behind working on fears and phobias through past life regression is that you will, once you uncover why you have that, other lifetimes where you experience that thing, that energy should lessen for you in this lifetime. And it did a lot and made it so that I could start communicating with people that had died, made it so that I could face death with a little different energy, a lot different energy. And so mission accomplished there for sure. But I'm still a little squeamish, a little weird. Okay, so that's a really long story to get to my point. One thing I've really been wanting to do, I've been showing you guys my resin art for a while. I've been pouring spheres and organites and magic charms and, pendants and all kinds of fun stuff. Well, I really want to do memorial pieces. And I did do, last year, you might remember, some of you, I'd talked about it, that some of her best friends, their dad died. And I had talked to mom and gotten her permission, and we took some of the flowers home from the funeral, and I made them a bunch of resin funeral memorial pieces out of his flowers. So for mom, I did a big sphere, like one of my big ones, that was full of a bunch of different flowers. For each of the kids, for the boys, their pieces were crushed flowers. One was kind of a diamond shape, the other was a cube. And for the girls, I did the smaller spheres that had a single rose in them. And they turned out beautifully, and it was a really cool gift. Now, I'd been practicing because I wanted to learn how to do that. And I had received some intuition before their dad died. He was on hospice, and we knew it was coming. But I had received some intuition that you need to learn how to do the flowers so that when he dies, you can offer that to your friends. So I did. I spent weeks learning how to do the flowers. And when he died, I offered that to our friends and made them these pieces. And they were really special. And it was something I felt really good about being able to do for them. So part of that is that people that make memorial pieces do use flowers, but a lot of times they also use cremains. See where I'm going here? And so it's something I want to do. I want to be able to offer this on my Etsy page and to my friends. And, it's something that I want to do. I want to be able to pour resin art with cremains as well as with memorial flowers, right? That's kind of the idea behind it. Well, I have battled with myself now for 6 weeks or so because I know I need to get started. I have gathered all of the materials I need, but I certainly am not going to sell something that I haven't practiced with, and I don't have any cremains. Well, the full moon this month or this week brought me a ton of creative energy, a lot of intuitive creative energy, and I knew that the time was right. And so I had put it out on my Facebook page and I made an offer to my friends that I am learning and I'm practicing, and I will make you a free memorial item if you are willing to, give me a tiny bit of your cremains to work with. Now, don't think I'm going in completely cold. I've done a whole bunch of research. I've talked to people who do it. You know, this is not a complete experiment, and I think I'm ready, but the cremains. So I did have people, a lot of people actually. I ended up having to close the door because I got more offers than I needed, which was really sweet. So my sister came last night and she handed me an urn and another little box and said, "Here's my dog and here's my cat. Here you go." And oh my God, you guys, there it was. I went, okay, here we are. We're doing this and it's okay and it's good. And I will treat those cremains with reverence. I will treat them with the sacredness that they deserve, with the respect that they deserve. And this is a big step of growth for me. This is a piece for me that I'm working through. I've been working through it obviously for a while. And I am so blessed to have people who are willing to trust me with those precious, precious items in order to make them something. And I know it's going to be fine. I was a little surprised by the little amount of fear that surged through me when she handed me those cremains, but I'm going to do it. So I'm ready. After the show today, I have already poured the first layers of her pieces. Now I'm ready for the layer that the cremains go in. So it's happening right after this show. And I'm confident it's fine. It's going to be completely fine. I also know that once I do it once, I'm over the hump and it's going to be okay. And this happens to be a dog that I adored and a cat that I adored. And so I'm really excited to get to do it. Excited to get to do it, but it's definitely a place of growth for me. So I wanted to share the journey with you guys because we all have places that we are still growing and figuring ourselves out, and this is definitely one for me. So, I will definitely be back to report on what happened and how it went and what I learned. And at some point, I will offer these, as pieces, as art pieces that I will offer to be able to do for people too. So that's coming. But anyway, this is something that, it's near and dear to me. And so I wanted to share it with you guys. So there you go. You might be happy you heard that story and maybe not so much, but I think that always examining what's in us and why is a really important way for us to continue to grow and I think to heal and challenge ourselves because it's easy I think as adults to get very complacent and I'm so guilty of it and not really grow anymore. And right now I'm just in a place of growth. So we're going to do it. It might be painful, it might be weird, it might be cremains, but it is what it is. Okay, let's share. So Jane said, on memorial pieces, how about a tiny photo of the pets in the paws? I don't know if you can put a picture in resin without ruining it. I don't think that you can because the resin, it's a two-part mix, and when it cures, it creates quite a lot of heat, and I think that would absolutely destroy a picture. But I'm sure there's a way. Actually, I think that you can decoupage a picture and then you can pour it in resin and you can do that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I read about that. Or you can make the piece and you can decoupage the picture onto the back of it so that it never actually goes through the resin process. Sorry, that's a lot of boring shit about resin. I can figure this out in my head. I don't have to do it for you. But so actually, Jane, I think it can be done. It would just take some very special care. But anyway, yes. So yes, I think it can be done. It would require some practice. Okay, here we go. Well, I do want to share with you Luminous for the week. I did share it in the chat room, but Luminous, of course, is the magazine that I publish on Tuesdays. It is a compilation of work that happens with my colleagues over at One to Listen. and it's something that I'm very excited to share. I love it this month. I love all of the hearts, the flowers, the pink, the love. This is my jam. Really like the cover this week. So if you want to see it, I did put it in the chat room, but you can also go over to katie-weaver.com and click on the Luminous Magazine button, and it's right there. So, a little note from me talking about the full moon. I did call the magazine this week the Love and Miracles edition. Why? Well, that's why, right? Because it's all about love, it's all about miracles. There's a lot of miracles rolling out. I know we're in a really weird time, but pay attention to the miracles in your life, to the things that you thought once upon a time thought were impossible that are now a part of your reality. It's happening. And of course, love is in the air with Valentine's Day. Some of you love Valentine's Day, some of you hate Valentine's Day, but either way, it's here. And all I will say about that is I love you guys. Actually, Scott and I had a very lively conversation about Valentine's Day yesterday on 1-2 News. So if you can catch an archive or a replay of that, you'll hear all about it. My musings this week, my memoir in Luminous, is about an experience I had with books. And for the love of books, I'm not going to tell you about it. I'll let you read about it. But just a sweet memory I have about a book and buying a book for my mom, and one of the neatest, weirdest places I have ever been. Okay, Kai's Kaleidoscope is about Dr. Charles Drew. February is Black History Month, and she wrote about a Black doctor that was very uncommon for his time. She wrote a beautiful article about him, and I really loved it. Thank you, Kai, for your attention to, well, everything wonderful, honestly. All right, the tip this week is how to make homemade rose water. Rose water is a wonderful, wonderful thing to use to raise the frequency in your home, your office, your car, yourself. I spray myself with rose water every day, actually. I love it. You can buy rose hydrosol. Rose hydrosol is the byproduct of making rose oil. And so when they make rose oil, the water that comes off of that, or when they make any essential oil and steam distill it, the water that comes off of that does carry a scent and a frequency from whatever plant matter that was used. And rose hydrosol is really sought after. It smells amazing. It's a beautiful product, and a lot of people really love it for various reasons. For skincare, just for, a body scent, just for raising your frequency, whatever. It's also really cool for using in space clearings. And this is why I like it. It's awesome for use in space clearings. So it's one of the reasons I like it. When you clear a space, you have basically cleaned the slate, and then you want to come back. So I'm talking about like smudging or using Palo Santo or dragon's blood or frequency, whatever, right? Whatever you use to clear space. When you do that, then you do want to come back and raise the frequency of the space. You want to set it where you want it to be. And rose oil is a really good way to do that. Roses and rose oil are considered to be the highest frequency flowers. A lot of people believe that the scent of roses is the scent of angels. So why not use rose oil or rose hydrosol or rose water, right? So I want to teach you how to make rose water. It is simple. Take a half a cup of dried organic rose petals. Either use your own and know that you did not put pesticides on them, or buy them. Mountain Rose Herbs is a really, really good source. A lot of health food stores have organic rose petals, and you don't need a lot, but about a half a cup. You're going to bring that to a boil and then simmer it on low for about 30 minutes. Cool it and strain it through some cheesecloth, and there you go. And then you can store that in the fridge or in an airtight glass jar. If you want to preserve it, you can add a teaspoon of vodka or a teaspoon of witch hazel. It will change the scent a tiny bit. The witch hazel will, the vodka won't. But if you do that, then you can not keep it in the fridge, and know that it's not going to go bad on you, because it gets stinky over time. But that's how you do it. Easy, easy enough. If you want to take it a step further and make rose syrup, which is something else that I absolutely love to put in tea and things like that, take the rose water that you have made and then make a simple syrup. And actually, you won't make a whole simple syrup. You'll just add some sugar to it and then simmer it until you get the consistency that you want. Or if you want to do that sugar-free, put monk fruit powder in it to the flavor that you want it, to the sweetness you want it, and simmer it and add a good sprinkling of xanthan gum, and that will thicken it a little bit so that you get that syrupy consistency without any sugar. So you can totally do that, and rose syrup like that is pretty beautiful on baked goods or in tea or whatever, So some ways to experience roses and enjoy roses. 'Tis the season, right? Probably don't do that with the roses that somebody gives you on Valentine's Day, because you don't know if those have been treated with something. And 9 times out of 10, yes, they have, right? So those are not for consumption. And so you want to make sure that what you're using is organic, because why wouldn't you? You don't want to make yourself sick or spray something around your house that isn't safe. So that's kind of how that works. But anyway, there's all fun and games there. I'm going to throw a little link up in the chat room for Jade Bloom. If you want to look at rose oil or rose hydrosol from them, might be kind of a fun Valentine's gift for yourself. You can find it here. And I will tell you straight up, I am an affiliate for Jade Bloom. And so if you use this link, I will get a small kickback on what you purchase from them. There is absolutely no pressure to do so. But if there's something you want and some oils you want, I always appreciate the support. So I did put a link in the chat room to that. And you can find that on my website as well. All the information you need for Jade Bloom. So there you go. Jennifer says she cooks with rose water. Nice. What do you cook with rose water? Now I'm super curious. I want to do that. Yep. Yep. Anna says she loves the Jade Bloom rose water, the best she's used. I know. I love it. I use it all the time. Totally down with it. Okay. Their rose oil, too, by the way, Anna, is top notch. And it's like $70, which is an unheard of good price. So anyway, that's just what I'm thinking about. So much in my head. Alrighty. Well, that's pretty much Luminous. I mean, there is so much more. I won't go through the entire thing with you, but there's a lot of great articles. Everything is new this week. Everything. So make sure that you find an article that resonates with you. I absolutely know you will. And as always, if you would like to subscribe to Receive Luminous, you can do that over at katie-weaver.com. So there you go. That is a mouthful. All right, I'm going to take a quick peek through the chat room, and then I think we'll get going on our topic, because I do have lots of things I want to tell you about, lots of fun stuff. So quick look. As quick as I can be, right? Thank you, Sid. Happy Valentine's Day to you. She said she loved my conversation with Scott on last week's 1-2 News. Yes, I will get it in the archive. I will ask Scott to get it in the archive so that you can listen to it. We have very differing opinions about Valentine's Day, and we always have. 22 years later, we still do. And it's okay. We still like each other. It's all good. All righty. Janelle, I really want to get to you. I'm not necessarily doing readings today, but I want to take a look at this. She is 3 weeks post-op from a complete hysterectomy. Recovery has been miserable. Just want to see if I'm picking up on any possible unforeseen complications. Seems like you've already experienced those, haven't you, Janelle? Man. All right, taking a really good look here. Here's what I want to do for you. When you have surgery, sometimes it puts a hole in your aura. And when you have organs removed from an energetic place, that leaves kind of a gaping hole in your aura again. And so we want to replace those things so that you are not struggling that way, right? So the physical healing just has to happen. We know this, but we can do the energetic work that sometimes does make a big difference. So, Janelle, I want to do two things. First, I'm going to I'm going to heal that hole in your aura from surgery itself. That feels like burning, it feels cold, and it's a way that people end up losing energy without really realizing it, and it makes it hard to recover from surgery. You're already struggling, your body's already had its ass kicked, right? And now your spirit does too, and it gets in the way. So I'm going to seal that up. I'm just sealing it all the way up with gold light so that that's no longer an issue. And now I'm going to go into your womb. I'm going to call forward two things, the ethereal energy of gold, the metal gold. We're going to do some alchemy, and the ethereal energy of carnelian crystal. And I'm going to combine that into a big sphere. So the gold actually, it helps on the energetic plane, but gold is usually called for when there's an infection. And so I don't even think you have an infection now, but I feel like maybe you did. Okay, so I'm going to build this sphere with these two ethereal elements. So it's a big, round, glowing sphere, and I'm going to press it right into your abdomen where your womb should be. Good, just really filling up that space so that it's not empty. And then I'm just going to light that up, asking this energy to completely fill that space and also support your healing, both physically and emotionally and spiritually. This has been really hard on you emotionally. Janelle, I'm so sorry you've been through this. It's been a nightmare. I really feel like you are on the upside, that obviously there's been some complications that had to be addressed. Obviously, I know you're in healthcare. When to talk to your doctor, if you're having an issue. But I feel like you're on the upside, that you are swinging up, and we'll see you get better and start feeling more like yourself now. So I'm so sorry you've been through this. Not cool. Why do our bodies have to pull this stuff? It is what it is, right? Yep, it sure is. All righty. Well, let's start talking a little about psychic games. This really came up because I did that panel, that divination panel a couple of weeks ago with Chris Ann Morgan and Caroline Nettle, and we had talked a lot about playing psychic games. We taught you guys some divination tools, right? Some stuff. And it really brought that up for me that I've done a lot of psychic games in my time with people, and they're fun and they're interesting. I'm going to give you some you can play by yourself and some that you can play with other people. Kind of a mix. Sometimes you kind of need other people, but whatever. We'll talk about both. So, some things that you can do by yourself. One is to be predictive always. So, to be predictive always, you're always predicting the next thing. For example, when I buy groceries, I always predict what I think the tally will be. And I usually say it to one of my kids or to Scott so that so that my transparency is out there. And I'm not always right. I'm usually in a very close ballpark. Sometimes I have it right down to the very last cent. Sometimes I don't, and that's okay, right? You cannot play psychic games if you're going to get really hung up on the outcome. This is always about practicing. So if you're going to get too messed up about being right, don't play. Because honestly, it won't be fun for you, and ultimately the reason for it is totally lost in the process if that's how it's going to be for you. So don't worry about that. You can quantify your results and find out if you were right, which is great, but no judgment if you weren't. Again, practice. Flexing your intuitive muscles. This is like lifting every day, right? You lift weights every day, you get stronger and stronger. You take a few weeks off, and what happens? Well, you lose a little of that, and then you have to build it back up. Psychic muscles are similar to that. So practices should be fun, but it shouldn't be all about being right or wrong, and it definitely shouldn't be about judging yourself in any way. So, again, if you can let yourself off the hook to just play and to be interested and curious, great. If you can't, and it has to be about being right or wrong, I don't know if I recommend it for you. You decide, it's up to you, but that's my thought. But being predictive always, predicting how much the gas is going to be by the time your tank is full, predicting who's calling on the phone before you look at the caller ID, predicting what color your friend's shirt is if you're meeting for coffee before you see her. Just thinking a little ways ahead. This doesn't have to be enormous things, right? You don't have to predict death. Please don't. You don't have to predict the next earthquake, but maybe you will by what you're feeling in your body. But it's the little things, right? What time will your significant other walk in the door tonight? What color of tie is your boss wearing today? What did Brenda bring for lunch? Right? It's just predictive. It's just fun. And it's about asking a question and receiving the answer. So I love being predictive always. I think that is a really good way to just always have that inner dialogue going and always be practicing. And you'll surprise yourself a lot sometimes in what you do pick up on. And other times you won't. You'll be like, yep, absolutely, it's a red tie, and there's no tie at all. It's okay. Just practice. All right? Okay. When you meet somebody for the first time, ask yourself, what do I need to know about this person? What is interesting about this person? How can I connect with this person? And trust yourself to allow yourself to move into an interesting conversation with them. And usually you can quantify a little bit what kind of, if your hits were correct. Like maybe you ask yourself, is this person married? Does this person have children? What does this person do for a living? Don't go too far, right? It's okay to feel into things like that, but have some ethics about it. Don't go too far. Don't dig into what does this person think of me or what is this person's deepest, darkest secret. Don't go too far, but surface stuff that you'll probably learn in an initial conversation with them, I'm totally comfortable with that. And then look for psychic apps. There are apps and games on the internet that you can play to help build your psychic skills. I think that those can be really fun. And crime. Now, listen, crime is it's a ball of wax all of its own, right? And crime, here's what I'm going to tell you about crime prediction. I've had a lot of students go through crime prediction with me. It is very interesting. I highly recommend that you look at cold cases, at things in your area that have never been solved, that you give yourself an opportunity to take a look at what's going on in your neck of the woods and look at those cases, right? Study the basics and then start asking your own questions of your intuition and writing down the answers. You may never really be able to quantify your hits. I have had clients come back to me and say, I did this and I am prepared to make sure that someone hears the answer, that I need to tell this to someone. I'm not going to tell you what to do with that. I will tell you this. I had a friend at the police department, a detective that was a friend of mine for years. And if I had a hit, I would shoot it over to her via text or instant message and just say, hey, looked at this case today, this thing came up. Sometimes it was relevant and sometimes it wasn't. But I never outed myself publicly as working on psychic crime. I'm not saying you shouldn't. That is my own hesitation. And the reason why is because sometimes that creates an enormous amount of pain for people. And I think that when a crime has been committed and there is a grieving family and there are people involved in this who have been through hell, that we should all be extremely, extremely sensitive to them. And so I will discuss crime on my show sometimes. I'll tell you guys about things that have happened or are happening. I have been and will continue to be extremely careful and sensitive about the details that I am receiving or what I hear. And if you do crime as a way to practice your intuition, I really, really recommend that you do that as well. Just be really careful, really careful. I did have a student once who reached out to the brother of a girl that was killed with some information that she received, and it was relevant and it was useful. And it was well received by him, and they actually ended up having lunch and discussing the situation, and that was a good thing. But it was a risk, and it was a risk in, potentially hurting this person who was already going through what he was going through. I will also tell you with crime that many times the message that I received from the deceased was that this case won't be solved and it is not meant to be. Oh, in our sense of justice, we think that everything has to have an answer, right? We think that there has to be justice, but that's not necessarily the case on the other side. You'd be surprised how many people I've spoken to over the years who had a crime committed upon them who have no dog in it. They don't care. They don't care at all if the person is ever found or brought to justice. They don't even care anymore. That's not always the case, but it's been the case a lot, which I always find really fascinating because we want revenge and we want it now, right? We want justice, but we also want to make sure that if we have a psycho out there, we get a hold of them before they get to hurt anybody else. But a little different. I could probably just do a whole show on crime, investigations in the psychic world. Probably not going to do that, at least not today, because we have other things to talk about. But if you do crime and you want to talk about it or you need some help, reach out. I'll talk about it. Just be careful with the information you receive. That's all I'm trying to say on that front. Okay, so those are all things that you can do all by yourself. Those are all solitary practices. I did write last week in Luminous 2 about how to use a pendulum for finding lost objects. And that's kind of an interesting practice as well. So I won't tell you all about that right now, but you can find it in last week's edition of Luminous. So some other psychic games and practices that you need to play with people. One is telepathy, and this is really fun and interesting. There's lots of ways to do it. One of the things I've done with my kids for years, and this is a game, when I was a kid in the car, we didn't have cell phones to keep us busy. We didn't have videos playing. We had to do stuff, So we sang and we played car games. And one of the car games I always used to play with my kids, and still do sometimes, is that we choose a topic, and then if it's your turn, you sit quietly, you envision a blackboard, you walk up to the blackboard, and in large clear letters, you write the thing. So let's say that we are doing animals. And usually you have a topic that makes it a little bit easier to hone in. So say you're doing animals, and I might sit with a group of people and I might envision myself and hold that energy really strongly. This vision of me walking up to the blackboard and writing monkey on the board. And then you wait. And sometimes the kids or the people that you're playing with will ask you to do it again. Maybe they think they know, but they're not quite there, or maybe they didn't see anything. Do it again. This takes some practice. But my kids got to where they were very good. And usually within, a lot of times Mars would have it, first try. But it didn't usually take them very long to be able to see it and know what I was writing. This Christmas, my nephew, Jack, who's 12, we were swimming. And he and I were just kind of floating around in the warm pool. And he said, Aunt Kate, what did you get me for Christmas? And I said, well, I'm not going to tell you, but I'll show you. And this is a very absolute kid. And he's like, that's not going to work. And I said, won't it? And he said, no. And I said, do you want to try? I said, because I'm not going to tell you. It's your Christmas present. It's supposed to be a surprise, but I will show you if you want me to show you. He said, okay, fine. So I taught him how to do it, and we held that space together, and I wrote gun. because his Uncle Scott bought him a BB gun for Christmas because he lost his old one. Now, our kids are not allowed to shoot animals, don't worry. They are only allowed to have target practice. They like to mow down all the cans they can get a hold of when we go camping. And somehow Jack last year lost his BB gun and he's been very upset about it. So Uncle Scott thought that we should replace it for him for Christmas. So I wrote on my blackboard, G-U-N. And I told him that, he was trying to narrow it down and narrow it down. And he said, well, I know it starts with a G. I just can't figure out what you would buy me that starts with a G. And I said, how do you know it starts with a G? And he said, because I can see the G, but I can't see anything else. So I said, okay, let's keep going. And so I wrote it again. And he could see the G and the U, but he couldn't figure out, because then his rational mind kicked in, right? So his rational mind is it's like a word puzzle. He's trying to fill it in with what he thinks it might be, right? He never did guess it. And I was laughing so hard because he had G-U. All he was missing was an N. But when he opened his Christmas present, he was so funny. And he was like, I was right. And I said, yeah, you were. Well, why didn't you tell me? And I said, well, because it's your Christmas present and it's supposed to be a surprise. But he got pretty dang close. Anyway, that's a fun game. And again, you do have to play it with others. Don't get too frustrated with yourself because it does definitely take some practice to get to a point where you can see it. But that's a pretty fun game to play. It's been one of my favorites over the years, to be honest. So that is a thought. I love that one. You just really have to get a willing party to come and play with you. The other thing that is really fun in psychic practice is psychometry. Psychometry is the study of an object. And so, like, for example, in my adult psychic development classes, when people walked in the door, if we were doing psychometry, I would have a basket on the table and I would tell them, put one item that belongs to you in the basket, and of course promise them they'd get it back. It might be keys or a necklace or a ring or some other small item that somebody had on their person, something that was theirs, a watch. Once everyone was ready, I'd pass that basket around and I'd ask people to just take out one object that wasn't theirs and that they didn't recognize, because in those classes people got to be good friends. So you got to be a little careful. Take one item. And then you take that item and you sit with it and you hold it and you feel it. You just sit with it in your hands. And then you start asking a few questions about it. How does this item feel? How does the person who owns this item feel? What do I need to know about them? What do I need to know to help them? What should I tell them? And then lastly, who does this belong to? Right? And then we'd go around class and say, this is some unflinching bravery because you are putting yourself out there, right? You're putting yourself out there for sure to read the item. So maybe you pulled out a watch and you're like, this watch feels anxious to me. I feel like the person who has this watch had a hard day at work. I feel like the person who has this watch has been fidgeting with it a lot and that they do that when they're nervous. Or I feel like the person who has this watch is feeling sad and they don't know why, or whatever. And then you ask them, who does it belong to? And I was blown away at how many times people knew. And maybe they sometimes knew because they had seen that watch on that person. That's possible, of course. And sometimes they didn't, right? But it was a really fun game and a neat way for people to get to read off of items. And reading off of items is really powerful. It really is. So practice psychometry. One way you can practice psychometry is through a thrift shop, right? Go into a thrift shop and pick up items and hold them and get a sense of who did this belong to? How did they use it? How did it end up here? You don't have to buy it. However, if you don't want to stand in the middle of Goodwill, you know, doing psychometry, you could certainly buy a few cheap things and bring them home, right? It's a great way to practice. You won't ever know the answer. You might not know if you're right or not. But again, what did I say about being right? Don't worry about that. Just flex those muscles. But psychometry is a really good way to practice. Now, sometimes with items, you pick up some energy you don't really want. So if that's the case, then clear yourself, right? Use smudge, use energy, use frequency, but clear yourself. And if you don't know how to clear yourself, maybe don't do psychometry until you do. Or, I will help you, obviously, but that's another way to practice. I think psychometry is a ton of fun and a very interesting practice because people surprise themselves. Many times I put people in the position of doing psychometry and they're scared because they don't they don't know how to trust themselves yet and they don't know how to trust the information. And honestly, I've kind of just thrown people into the fire sometimes and just made them do it. But what I've learned from that is that you're better at psychometry than you think. And if you've never done it, I highly recommend that you try it. It's a really easy and fun way to practice. So that's how you do all of that. It really makes me wonder if you guys would benefit from a few more like YouTube tutorial type videos about doing some of this stuff. And I might do that in the future. And I do on YouTube, I do Unchurch on Sundays. And this week we had all kinds of tech issues, but we did finally get through it on YouTube. But if you follow me on YouTube, it's Domestic Mystic on YouTube. And I think Scott put a link in here, but at any rate, oh my gosh, she just spoke in my ear and scared me half to death. Okay. He put a link in here for YouTube, but you might follow that YouTube. I will, if it's something that is that you're interested in, I can continue to challenge you with psychic games through some videos there. But anyway, those are some thoughts for you. Yeah. Okay, Julia said, my fear with psychometry is not being able to clear myself. I understand that. I understand that entirely. I will tell you this, Julia. Yes, you can. I have no question of that. But let's do this. Before you do psychometry, before you pick up that item, put a big, thick layer of blue light around you, holding the intention that you will not absorb the energy from this piece, that you are a hollow bone, that you'll read the energy from it, that you will feel it briefly while you're holding it, but that you will not absorb any of it, right? In fact, anyone that's going to do psychometry, do that. That works really well. It's all about intention anyway. And all you want to do is read the piece. You don't want to, take it all home with you anyway. So I would try that, Julia, with a lot of confidence that you can shield yourself and that you don't have to take that energy on forever. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We've got about 90 seconds left. But Julia, thank you for that comment. I think it's a really important one. I've heard people say that about crime too. And I think that's true. If you're going to do, practice with crime, you need to be prepared to clear yourself and find a way to step away from it. Anna says, I have played telepathy games in the past, and it really surprised me in how correct I was much of the time. I know, it's pretty cool, right? I think so much of the communication we have with each other is more telepathic than we realize anyway, with animals and with people. We're just so conditioned to the spoken word, but I think a lot of our communication is telepathic. We just don't really realize it. I think that's kind of fun. One time when we had Healing Hands, one of our clients, we were having a conversation with her, and Christy and I were speaking to her, and to each other. And she said, you guys are talking to each other without speaking, and to me. And we kind of both looked at each other, and she said, you are, I can see it. She said, you're talking to each other, and then you're talking to me. And so I'm left out of half the conversation. And I really laughed because she was right? And she could see that we were holding some information that we weren't actually sharing with her, but it was passing between the two of us, which just really made me laugh. But, when you're talking about your business, there's just things you don't share with your customers. And that's what was happening. But it made me laugh because she was completely right about that. But I've heard that lots of times in various places. But anyway, practice, play, have fun. What is life if we're not enjoying it, right? Okay, we have definitely talked down to the end of the show. Don't forget that tomorrow is 1-2 day. And so watch for it. I will be sending out an email with all of my stuff through the system. Click for advisor. So if you've ever been a client of mine before, you'll get my email with all of my specials and whatnot. But I will also post them over on my fan page here on Facebook, Katie Weaver, Domestic Mystic. And come see me. Let's talk. It's going to be a fun, fun day. And don't forget that at noon Pacific, I will be here on 1-2 Radio on the long road with Kai Greenway talking about dreams and dreaming and all of the dream world stuff. So thank you guys all so much for being here. You've been listening to The Katie Weaver Show here on 1-2 Radio, where we're changing the way you listen to the world.